The grand halls of the crystalline empire's royal palace sparkled with an otherworldly glow as Princess Lyra stood before the High Council. Her translucent form caught the light, sending rainbow patterns dancing across the polished floor. Unlike the rigid postures of her fellow council members, she leaned forward with barely contained excitement. "Another primitive species," Lord Blake announced, his crystalline form pulsing with disdain. "These humans have barely mastered faster-than-light travel. They don't deserve our attention." Lyra's inner light flickered with annoyance. She had spent months studying the transmissions from Earth, fascinated by their rapid technological progress. "They achieved in centuries what took us millennia," she argued, her voice clear as a bell. "Their adaptability alone makes them worthy of study." The council chamber erupted in disapproving murmurs. Studying lesser species was one thing, but Lyra's suggestion of direct contact was unprecedented. Her father, Emperor Ray, raised his hand for silence. "Daughter, your fascination with these humans concerns me," he said, his tone gentle but firm. "They are unpredictable, emotional beings." Lyra straightened her posture, mimicking the formal bearing expected of her station. "That is precisely why we must understand them. Their colony ships have already reached the edges of our space. Contact is inevitable." The council debated for hours. Lyra watched as opinions shifted, not through her arguments, but through fear. The humans were expanding too quickly to ignore. Finally, Emperor Ray made his decision. "We will send a diplomatic mission," he announced. "But you, Lyra, will remain here." Lyra's inner light dimmed with disappointment, but she had anticipated this. Over the next week, she carefully built her case, presenting historical precedents where royal presence had smoothed diplomatic relations. She enlisted allies among the younger council members who shared her curiosity about Earth. Her persistence paid off. The morning the diplomatic vessel prepared for departure, Lyra stood among the delegation, her travel crystals packed with Earth data she had collected. The ship itself was a masterpiece of crystalline engineering, its transparent hull refracting starlight like a cosmic jewel. As they approached Earth's solar system, Lyra spent hours in the observation deck. The blue planet grew larger each day, its swirling clouds and vast oceans unlike anything in the Empire. Her excitement built as they entered orbit. The human greeting party waited in their orbital station. Lyra studied them through the viewing screens, fascinated by their solid forms and varied colors. Their leader, a tall figure in a blue uniform, stepped forward as the crystalline delegation materialized in the station's reception chamber. "Welcome to Earth Station 1, he said, his voice carrying authority, despite his species youth. "I'm Captain James Reed of the United Space Command." Lyra noticed how his eyes widened slightly at their appearance, but he maintained his composure. Most species found the crystalline people's transparent forms disconcerting at first. The head of their delegation, Ambassador Stone, began the formal greetings. Lyra remained silent, observing. She noticed how the humans moved with a fluid grace her people lacked. Even their formal stances seemed to contain barely restrained energy. Captain Reed's gaze met hers briefly. Instead of the fear or revulsion she expected, she saw curiosity that matched her own. He offered a small smile, a gesture she had studied in Earth transmissions, but never seen in person. As the diplomatic party moved toward the conference rooms, Lyra fell slightly behind, taking in every detail of the station. The humans had managed to create beauty with metal and plastic, so different from the crystal spires of her home. "First time seeing a human station, Your Highness." Captain Reed had dropped back to walk beside her. "First time seeing humans at all," she admitted, surprised by his directness. "Your species is fascinating." His smile widened. "I could say the same about yours." In that moment, Lyra knew her fight to join the delegation had been worth it. There was so much more to these humans than her people realized. She just hoped she would have time to learn it all. In the privacy of her quarters aboard the diplomatic vessel, Princess Lyra sat surrounded by floating holographic screens. Each display showed different aspects of human culture, their entertainment, news, and social interactions. The soft blue glow of Earth visible through her window mixed with the rainbow reflections of her crystalline form. "Computer, replay the human dance sequence," she commanded. The main screen lit up with a performance from something called a music festival. Humans moved in ways that seemed to defy physics, their bodies flowing like liquid crystal. Lyra had discovered these recordings 3 weeks into their diplomatic mission. What started as cultural research had become an obsession. The way humans expressed themselves through movement fascinated her. Her own people considered such displays undignified. Their movements were always precise, calculated, efficient. She stood up, trying to mimic a simple motion she had seen. Her crystalline joints weren't designed for such fluid movement, but she persisted. "Computer, decrease room transparency to maximum privacy settings." The windows turned opaque, ensuring no one could see in. The music started again, a rhythmic beating humans called bass mixed with melodic sounds. Lyra raised her arms, attempting to copy the dancers' movements. Her first tries were awkward, her crystalline form too rigid. But she kept practicing, determined to understand this aspect of human culture. Hours passed as she studied and attempted different styles of dance. She had learned that humans had hundreds of dance forms, each telling its own story. Some were structured and formal, like her people's ceremonial movements. Others were wild and free, concepts alien to crystalline society. "Your Highness," Ambassador Stone's voice came through the communication system. "The humans have invited us to observe something called a ballet tomorrow." Lyra quickly shut down the holographic displays. "Thank you, Ambassador. I will attend." Her inner light pulsed with excitement. A chance to see human dance in person. That night, she couldn't power down for rest. Instead, she pulled up more research on ballet. The grace and precision of ballet dancers amazed her. Their movements required strength and control that rivaled crystalline ceremonial forms, yet contained an emotional element her people's dances lacked. She started practicing basic ballet positions, consulting diagrams in her database. Her crystalline legs struggled with the turnout position, but she found she could achieve a reasonable first position. The mirror in her quarters reflected her attempts, her transparent form glowing with concentration. "If the council could see me now," she whispered to herself, attempting a play. The thought of their reaction should have worried her, but instead, it made her inner light pulse with amusement. They wouldn't understand how these studies were helping her understand humans better. A small alert on her desk caught her attention. Another human cultural database had finished downloading. This one contained something called street dance. The movements were completely different from ballet, more energetic and free-form. Lyra found herself trying to move her shoulders in a pop and lock motion. She was so absorbed in her practice that she almost missed the scheduled evening report to her father. Quickly composing herself, she activated the long-range communicator. Emperor Ray's image appeared, his crystalline form dignified as always. "The diplomatic meetings progress well," she reported, keeping her tone formal. "Humans are more reasonable than our intelligence suggested." "You seem different, daughter," the Emperor observed. "Your light patterns have changed." Lyra steadied her inner glow. "I am learning much about their culture," she said carefully. If he knew just how much, he would recall her immediately. After the call ended, she returned to her practice. Tomorrow she would see real human dancers perform. Until then, she would continue her secret studies, trying to understand why these movements affected her so deeply. Her crystalline form might never move exactly like a human's, but with each practice session, she felt closer to understanding their spirit. That understanding, she believed, was worth any risk to her royal dignity. Past midnight on Earth Station 1, Princess Lyra was lost in her secret practice. The lights in her quarters pulsed in rhythm with Earth music, something called pop that she had recently discovered. Her crystalline form glowed with different colors as she attempted to move to the beat. "Just feel the music," she whispered to herself, repeating what she had heard human instructors say in videos. Her movements were becoming less rigid, though still far from the fluid grace of human dancers. The song reached its chorus, and she attempted a simple spin. The door slid open. Captain James Reed stood frozen in the doorway, security tablet in hand, mouth slightly open. He had been doing his nightly security check, a routine he personally handled for the diplomatic wing. He hadn't expected to find the alien princess dancing to Taylor Swift. Lyra's form went completely transparent, her species equivalent of turning pale. The music continued to play as they stared at each other in shocked silence. Reed started, then stopped, clearly unsure of diplomatic protocol for this situation. Lyra's crystalline form sparked with various colors: embarrassment, fear, and something else she couldn't quite name. This isn't. I was just. For the first time in her royal life, she found herself completely at a loss for words. Reed did something unexpected. He smiled, not the polite, diplomatic smile she had seen during official functions, but a genuine, warm expression that reached his eyes. "Your form transitions are getting smoother," he said, stepping into the room and letting the door close behind him. "But you're still too stiff in the shoulders." Lyra's inner light flickered in surprise. "You're not." "Disgusted." "Disgusted." Reed raised an eyebrow. "Why would I be disgusted by someone trying to learn about our culture?" The music had shifted to a slower song. Lyra's colors stabilized slightly. "My people consider such movements beneath us. We're supposed to be above emotional displays." Reed walked further into the room, setting his security tablet down. "Yet here you are, the crown princess, dancing to earth music in the middle of the night." "I've been studying human dance forms," Lyra admitted, her voice gaining confidence. "There's something beautiful about how your people express themselves through movement. Would you like some help?" Reed offered, then quickly added, "That is, if it wouldn't be inappropriate. I'm not exactly a dance instructor, but I know the basics." Lyra's inner light brightened. "You would teach me, even though I'm not built for human movements." "Who says you're not?" Reed stepped back, creating space between them. "Dance isn't about being built for it. It's about expressing what you feel. Watch." He demonstrated a simple step sequence, his movements casual but rhythmic. Lyra observed how his weight shifted, how his arms moved naturally with the beat. "Now you try," he encouraged. "Don't think about being crystalline or human. Just move." Lyra attempted to copy his movements. Her first try was awkward, but Reed nodded approvingly. "That's it. Now let it flow more naturally." They spent the next hour working on basic steps. Reed was patient, showing her how to adapt human movements to work with her crystalline form. By the end, Lyra had managed to string together a short sequence that, while not exactly human-looking, had its own unique grace. "Thank you," she said as they finally stopped. "But please, this must remain between us. If my father knew." Reed made a gesture she had learned meant zipping one's lips. "Diplomatic secret," he assured her, "though if you'd like more lessons." Lyra's form sparkled with excitement before she could control it. "You would do that. Same time tomorrow," he suggested. "I'll bring some different music." As Reed left to complete his security rounds, Lyra stood in the center of her room, her inner light pulsing with new emotions. For the first time, she felt truly seen, not as a crystalline princess, but as someone trying to bridge two worlds through dance. Little did she know, this midnight discovery would change both their worlds forever. 3 weeks had passed since Captain Reed discovered Lyra's secret dancing. Their midnight lessons had become the highlight of her diplomatic mission. Tonight, they were working on something new in the station's unused observation deck. "The waltz," Reed explained, standing at a proper distance, "is all about elegance and connection. It's one of our oldest formal dances." Lyra's crystalline form sparkled under the starlight streaming through the observation windows. "Connection. But our species can't actually touch. The energy differentials would be." "We adapt," Reed demonstrated, holding his hands in position with space between them. The dance is about harmony, not physical contact. Classical music filled the room as they began. Lyra followed Reed's lead, maintaining the careful distance their biology required. Her movements had improved dramatically over their practice sessions, finding a unique blend of crystalline precision and human fluidity. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Reed counted softly. You're getting it. Now try the turn. Lyra executed the turn, her form catching the starlight and sending rainbow patterns across the deck. She had learned that her species' natural light properties could enhance the dance in ways humans never could. Beautiful, Reed said, then quickly added, the technique, I mean. Lyra's inner light flickered in what Reed had come to recognize as amusement. Thank you. Though I'm curious, why did you really decide to help me? Reed slowed their dance, considering his answer. I suppose I saw someone trying to understand us. Really understand us, not just study us like specimens. Is that unusual? Lyra matched his slower pace perfectly. Most alien species we've met either dismiss us as primitive or treat us like a problem to be managed. He guided her through another turn. You're different. You see value in our culture. Lyra's form dimmed slightly. My people are among those who think humans are primitive. They would be horrified to see their princess dancing. Yet here you are, Reed smiled, breaking all sorts of royal protocols. Their dance came to a natural pause as the music ended. Lyra moved to the observation window, looking out at Earth below. Sometimes I think my people have forgotten how to grow. We've been static for so long, proud of our achievements, but never reaching for more. Reed joined her at the window, careful to maintain their safety distance. Change often starts with small steps, or in this case, dance steps. Lyra turned to face him. Teach me something else, something less formal. Well, there's this style called swing dancing. Reed started, but was interrupted by a beeping from his communication device. Captain Reed to the command center immediately. A voice announced, Crystalline Empire ship approaching. Lyra's form went almost completely transparent. That's not scheduled. Something's wrong. They rushed to their respective positions, Reed to the command center and Lyra to the diplomatic quarters. But before they separated, Reed caught her attention. Same time tomorrow, he asked, showing no sign of worry despite the situation. Lyra's form brightened momentarily. If we're not at war by then. Then we'll dance to celebrate the peace, he replied with a wink. As Lyra hurried back to her quarters, her mind raced. The approaching ship could mean many things, none of them good. Had they discovered her dancing? Were there new political tensions, or was it simply a routine check that hadn't been properly communicated? She reached her room just as Ambassador Stone's message came through. Emergency meeting in 5 minutes, Your Highness. Lyra quickly composed herself, adjusting her form to the proper royal bearing. But as she prepared to face whatever crisis approached, she found herself moving with a subtle rhythm, no longer bound by the rigid patterns of her upbringing. Whatever came next, these lessons in human dance had changed her forever. The question was, would that change bring harmony or discord to their two worlds? The diplomatic chamber crackled with tension as the holographic image of Emperor Ray materialized. His crystalline form towered over the assembled delegates, pulsing with barely contained anger. Daughter, his voice resonated through the chamber. Explain these images. Multiple holographic displays flickered to life, showing recordings of Lyra's dance practices with Captain Reed. Her inner light dimmed as she realized someone had been watching, recording, reporting back to the Empire. Ambassador Stone's form darkened with disapproval. Your Highness, consorting with humans in such a manner. I was studying their culture. Lyra straightened her form, facing her father's image directly, learning their ways to better understand. You were debasing yourself. Emperor Ray's interruption sent shockwaves through the crystalline delegates, dancing like a primitive. The heir to the crystalline empire, reduced to mimicking human movements. Captain Reed stood at attention near the human delegation, his face carefully neutral but his hands clenched at his sides. The other human diplomats shifted uncomfortably. "The Royal Council has seen these recordings," Emperor Ray continued. "They demand your immediate return. This human contamination must be purged before." Contamination. Lyra's form suddenly blazed with color, surprising everyone, including herself. "Is that what we call learning now? Understanding? Growth?" The chamber fell silent. No one had ever heard the princess speak to the emperor this way. "You forget yourself, daughter." Emperor Ray's form darkened dangerously. "No, father. For the first time, I remember myself." Lyra moved to the center of the chamber. "We call ourselves advanced, yet we fear what's different. We pride ourselves on our knowledge, yet refuse to learn anything new." Ambassador Stone stepped forward. "Your Highness, please consider your words carefully. The treaty with Earth." "The treaty?" Lyra's laugh sounded like crystal chimes. "The treaty where we pretend to respect humans while secretly considering them beneath us, where we share technology but hold back cultural exchange." She turned slowly, addressing both human and crystalline delegates. "I've learned more about humanity through dance than all our diplomatic meetings combined. Their art shows their soul, adaptable, expressive, unafraid to change." "Enough." Emperor Ray's image grew larger. "You will return home immediately, or I will send the Imperial Guard to retrieve you." The human delegates tensed. An Imperial Guard retrieval would be seen as an act of aggression. Captain Reed took a small step forward, but Lyra raised her hand slightly, stopping him. "If you do that, father, you'll prove to every species watching that we're exactly what they fear: rigid, unchanging, afraid." Her voice softened. "Is that truly what you want for our empire?" Emperor Ray's form flickered with conflicting emotions. For the first time, he seemed uncertain. "Give me 1 month," Lyra proposed. "Let me show you what I've learned. Let me prove that understanding other cultures doesn't weaken us. It makes us stronger." The chamber held its breath. The Emperor's next words could start a war or open a door. Finally, his form stabilized. 1 month, daughter. But if you bring shame to our empire, I will bring us honor." Lyra's form glowed with determination, just not in the way you expect. As the Emperor's image faded, the chamber erupted in urgent discussions. Ambassador Stone hurried to damage control with the human delegates. Captain Reed caught Lyra's eye across the room, giving her a subtle nod. Lyra stood still, her form shimmering with mixed emotions. She had 1 month to prove that dance, that human culture, could bridge their worlds. 1 month to change thousands of years of crystalline tradition. Her inner light pulsed with a new rhythm. She had learned from humans that sometimes the hardest steps led to the most beautiful dances. Now she just had to teach her people how to dance. The grand ballroom of Earth Station 1 glittered with both human decorations and crystalline light. Delegates from 20 species had gathered for what was announced as a cultural exchange summit. None knew they were about to witness something unprecedented. Princess Lyra stood in a preparation chamber, her crystalline form shifting through subtle colors as she focused. Captain Reed waited nearby, respecting the safe distance between their species. "Are you sure about this?" he asked softly. "There's no going back once you start." "My people need this." Lyra's form stabilized with determination. "We all do." Their month of preparation had transformed the simple dance lessons into something new. They had created a performance that would combine crystalline ceremonial movements with human dance, set to music that blended both worlds. The chamber doors opened. Ambassador Stone rushed in, his form flickering with anxiety. "Your Highness, the Emperor's ship has just docked. He's coming personally." Lyra's light pulsed brighter. "Good. Let him see what his daughter has created." The main ballroom had been arranged with the audience in a circle, leaving the center clear. Crystalline diplomats sat rigid and formal, while humans and other species mixed more casually. Emperor Ray entered with his royal guard, his massive form dominating his section of the room. The lights dimmed. A single spotlight illuminated the center as Lyra glided out. Her crystalline form had been specially modified for the performance, each facet carefully arranged to catch and reflect light in specific ways. The music began, a human orchestra playing alongside crystalline sound resonators. Lyra started with traditional crystalline ceremonial forms, her movements precise and dignified. The crystalline audience nodded in approval. Then the music shifted. Human rhythms wove into the crystalline harmonies. Lyra's movements began to change, blending rigid ceremony with fluid grace. Her form caught the lights, sending patterns dancing across the walls that matched her movements. The crystalline diplomats stirred uneasily. Emperor Ray leaned forward, his form darkening. But then something unexpected happened. As Lyra danced, her crystalline body began to emit light in ways her species had never seen before. Each movement created new patterns, new colors, new possibilities. She wasn't just dancing. She was showing her people capabilities they had forgotten they had. The human audience began to respond, their natural appreciation for art and movement showing in their faces. Even some of the younger crystalline delegates were leaning forward, their forms unconsciously swaying slightly. Lyra moved faster now, combining ballet turns with crystalline light forms. Her body created art in motion, telling a story of two worlds meeting, learning, growing together. When she performed a perfect human spin while maintaining a complex crystalline light pattern, scattered applause broke out. The music reached its climax. Lyra's final movements combined the highest crystalline ceremonial forms with the most elegant human dance techniques. Her body became a prism, splitting light into 1,000 colors that moved with her, creating a display that left the audience breathless. As the last note faded, Lyra held her final pose, one foot pointed in ballet form while her upper body maintained perfect crystalline alignment. The room remained silent for one long moment. Then Captain Reed stood and began to applaud. The human delegates joined immediately, followed by the other species. One by one, the younger crystalline delegates rose, their forms pulsing with appreciation. All eyes turned to Emperor Ray. He stood slowly, his massive form unreadable. The room waited for his reaction. Would he see this as the dishonor he had feared, or something more? Finally, he spoke, his voice carrying clearly. My daughter has shown us something new. Perhaps it is time we remembered how to grow. Lyra's form blazed with joy as the entire room erupted in applause. She had done more than create a new dance. She had opened a door between worlds. As she took her bows, she caught Captain Reed's proud smile. Together, they had proven that the greatest steps forward often came from learning new ways to move. 1 year after Lyra's historic dance performance, the crystalline empire had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Grand Hall of the Imperial Palace now hosted regular cultural exchange events, with delegates from Earth and other worlds sharing their arts and traditions. Lyra stood at her favorite observation point, watching a group of young crystalline students attempting human ballet moves while their human instructor guided them from a safe distance. Her form glowed with pride as she saw them creating their own unique interpretations. Your dance school is quite a success, Captain Reed. Now Ambassador Reed said as he approached. He wore the new protective field generator that allowed humans to move closer to crystalline beings without risk. Our dance school, Lyra corrected him. I would never have found this path without you. The school had become the first official joint human crystalline project. Students from both species learned each other's movement arts, creating new forms that celebrated their differences instead of being limited by them. The council meeting went well, Reed reported. The cultural exchange program is being expanded to include music and visual arts, though I don't think anything will top your performance from last year. Lyra's form sparkled with amusement. That performance almost started a civil war in the Empire. Half the noble houses thought I had gone mad. And now those same houses are sending their children here to learn. Reed gestured to the students below. Funny how things change. Emperor Ray's massive form appeared at the entrance to the hall. The students quickly bowed, but he waved them to continue their practice. He had changed too, his once rigid bearing now showing hints of fluid grace. "Daughter," he called out, "the Artesian delegation has arrived. They wish to learn about this fusion dance you've created." The Artesians were known throughout the galaxy for their dedication to pure art forms. That they would seek out this new dance style was a major diplomatic breakthrough. "Perhaps we should show them how it all began," Lyra suggested. She turned to Reed. "One last dance lesson." Reed smiled and took his position at the proper distance. The students stopped their practice to watch as the princess and the human ambassador began to move. Their dance had evolved over the year, becoming something neither purely human nor crystalline. Lyra's form created complex light patterns while matching Reed's rhythm. Though they could never touch, their movements were perfectly synchronized. The watching artisans murmured in appreciation. Emperor Ray's form pulsed with what could only be described as fatherly pride. As they finished their demonstration, one of the young crystalline students approached Lyra. "Your Highness, could you teach us that light pattern? The one that follows the human movements." "That's why we're here," Lyra replied warmly. "To learn from each other, to grow together." Later that evening, Lyra and Reed stood on the palace's highest spire, looking out at the crystalline city below. New construction showed signs of human architectural influence, while human buildings on Earth now incorporated crystalline design elements. "Did you ever imagine that night you caught me dancing would lead to all this?" Lyra asked. Reed shook his head. "I just saw someone trying to understand us. I never dreamed it would change both our worlds." Change isn't always about big gestures. Lyra's form shifted through gentle colors. Sometimes it's just about being willing to learn new steps. Below them, the city sparkled with life as humans, and crystalline beings moved through the streets together, each adapting to the other's ways while maintaining their own unique nature. A new dance on a cosmic scale. "Ready for tomorrow's advanced class?" Reed asked. Lyra's form brightened. "Always. After all, we're still learning too." And so the dance continued, a bridge between worlds built not of treaties or technology, but of understanding, growth, and the willingness to move in new ways. The princess who dared to dance had shown them all a better path forward.